Welcome back to DarkNight Whispers. Tonight's story is about a young couple, their newborn baby, and the strange things they began to notice in the dead of night. Every night at exactly midnight, their child would stir, sit up in the crib, and play with someone or something that no one else could see. At first, they thought it was just imagination, but what they discovered was far darker. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to DarkNight Whispers, and comment below. Do you believe babies can see things adults can't? Now, let's begin. Sophie and Daniel had just brought home their first child, a baby girl named Emily. She was barely 6 months old, with wide, curious eyes and a laugh that filled the house with joy. Their lives had shifted into that strange, sleepless rhythm every new parent knows: diaper changes, late-night feedings, lullabies sung in weary voices. But despite the exhaustion, they were happy. The house they lived in was an old rental on the edge of town. It creaked in the wind and carried the smell of dust in its walls, but the rent was cheap, and there was plenty of room for their new family. Emily's nursery was a small room with pale yellow wallpaper, decorated with cartoon rabbits. Her crib stood near the window, where moonlight often fell across her face. For the first few weeks, everything was normal. Emily slept when she was supposed to, cried when she was hungry, giggled when Sophie made funny faces. But then, one night, it began. It was exactly 12:03 a.m. when Sophie woke to the sound of laughter. Not just a baby's laugh, the kind where Emily would kick her legs and squeal in delight, but giggles that went on and on, almost like she was responding to someone. At first, Sophie thought Daniel must have woken to play with her. She slipped out of bed and padded down the hallway. But when she peeked into the nursery, Daniel wasn't there. Emily sat up in her crib, her tiny hands reaching into the air as if she were passing a toy to someone unseen. Her gaze was fixed on the corner of the room where shadows pooled. She smiled, babbled, and then laughed again, her chubby hands clapping. Sophie froze. "Emily?" she whispered. The baby turned, giggled, and went back to her invisible game. Shaken, Sophie picked her up and rocked her. Emily smelled of warm milk and sleep, her body soft and real. But when Sophie laid her back in the crib, Emily immediately rolled over, looked into the corner again, and giggled with delight. Sophie didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next night, it happened again. Midnight, laughter, tiny hands reaching into the dark. Daniel dismissed it at first. "Babies have imaginations," he said. "She's learning to entertain herself." But Sophie wasn't convinced. The way Emily looked at the corner, focused, aware, it felt like she was looking at a person. Within a week, the behavior escalated. They found toys pulled out of the toy box and scattered across the floor in the morning. They'd hear the faint rattle of Emily's favorite toy when they knew she was asleep. Once, Daniel swore he heard the sound of a lullaby playing softly, though there was no music box in the house. The worst was the baby monitor. At 12 o'clock every night, it would crackle with static. Sometimes they heard faint whispers. Once, Sophie heard her own name so soft she thought she imagined it. But one night, Daniel heard a low, unfamiliar voice say, "Don't take her away." They began keeping a strict watch. One night, Sophie crept into the nursery just before midnight, determined to catch whatever was happening. She sat in the rocking chair in the corner, half hidden in the shadow. At 12:01, Emily stirred. She sat up, clutched her blanket, and turned her head toward the same corner every time, the one opposite the chair. Sophie felt her blood run cold. Emily smiled, stretched out her arms, and began clapping. Her eyes tracked something Sophie couldn't see, something that seemed to move closer to the crib. Then Emily said her first word, "Play." Sophie's breath caught. She had never taught Emily that word. The baby reached upward, giggling at empty air, as though someone tall had leaned down to tickle her. And in the silence of the nursery, Sophie heard it too. A faint chuckle, deep, male. She grabbed Emily and fled the room, her heart hammering. The next day, Sophie demanded answers from the landlord. At first, he was evasive, but eventually, he admitted that the house had a history. Years ago, a family lived there, a couple and their only child, a little boy named Matthew. The father was a DJ who worked late-night shifts. The boy was often left to play alone in his room. One night, tragedy struck. The child wandered outside near midnight into the marsh behind the property and drowned. The parents moved away. The house sat empty for years. No one likes to rent it long, the landlord admitted. People hear things, toys move, it's unsettling. Sophie hung up the phone in silence. They decided to move out. But moving takes time, and that night, they had to stay one last time. At 11:50, Sophie sat awake, clutching Emily to her chest. Daniel stayed beside her, his hand gripping hers tightly. They kept the lights on, but at 12:03, the nursery light flickered. The baby monitor hissed. Emily wriggled from Sophie's arms, laughing with excitement. "Play," she cried again, reaching toward the dark corner. And then they saw it, a shape. Small at first, like a crouching child. Its eyes gleamed faintly, reflecting light that wasn't there. Slowly, it rose taller, stretching like shadows do when a candle burns low. A deep, hollow laugh filled the room. Daniel shouted, grabbing Sophie and Emily, rushing them out of the nursery. Behind them, toys rattled violently, the crib shook, and the walls echoed with a child's giggle that twisted into something darker. They never went back for their things. Weeks later, in their new apartment, Sophie tucked Emily into a fresh crib. The room was bright, safe, untouched by history. But at midnight, Sophie woke. From Emily's room came the soft, unmistakable sound of her daughter laughing. She rushed in only to find Emily sitting up in bed, clapping her hands. And in the baby monitor, faint through static, came the same low voice as before. "She's not done playing. So tell me, do you believe babies can see spirits we can't?" And if your child started laughing at something invisible every midnight, what would you do? Comment your thoughts below. Don't forget to like this story, subscribe to DarkNight Whispers, and share this video with someone who thinks babies are always innocent. Until next time, watch the nursery door.